summer in the city, back of my neck getting dirt and gritty. Been down, isn't it a pity? Doesn't seem to be a shadow in the city.
Meanwhile, crude continuing its slide on Monday, inching closer to 7-year lows. Those losses translating to about $360 billion in market cap erosion for the S&P 500 Energy Index this year. Joining us now with more is Tom Petrie, chairman of Petrie Partners. Tom, welcome back. It's nice to see you again.
Good to see you, Scott.
You have an idea of how low you think oil ultimately goes?
I think it'll test into the 30s. Whether it'll ever get as low as the Goldman report is debatable. It's not impossible, but it would be very brief that it would be that low if it gets there. If I had to pick a number, I'd go 31 to 33, somewhere in that range.
Basic, simple question. What's driving it lower? Is it really a supply-demand imbalance, or is it something more?
Well, supply-demand imbalance is there, but we hear so much about it. The thing to recognize is it's probably in that 1.5 to no more than 2 million barrels a day. And the embedded declines from the withdrawal of capital spending really could kick in, I think, in the course of 2016. When that happens, that's when you'll see a real change in inventory draw. That's why people pay attention to that, but it's a little early to expect it to turn in the first 2 quarters of 2016. Second half is my guess.
Mm-hmm. Our guest host, Larry Bossidy, has a question for you, Tom.
Morning, Tom. Do you essentially believe the OPEC coalition is over? In other words, they're not being able to restrain people from getting to a level on a monthly or daily basis that makes good sense, and their influence is waning? What do you think the future of OPEC is?
OPEC has always had some diversity, even in the 80s, as you well recall, Larry, when you were dealing with this with Ladd, I believe. OPEC really has never been really cohesive, but this is much more diverse than ever. And given the enmity that exists today between Saudi Arabia and its Sunni allies and versus Iran and Iraq, I do think OPEC's role is much diminished. And so that old expression that the swing producers are now some of the unconventional producers in North America has some validity. Not total, but some.
Tom, given the fact that you have advised the Saudi government on issues related to oil and gas in the past, there is a suggestion, and our own Brian Sullivan asked the CEO of Chevron yesterday about the idea that the Saudis like what's happening, that ultimately they're trying to cause some American companies to go out of business so that they can gain market share. You buy that?
I think that's a factor. I don't think it's the primary factor, but it's one of the top 3. The other big factor is how they feel about the U.S. having, in many respects, let Iran off the hook with the nuclear negotiations. I think that's a bigger one, and I think Russia and the pushback on Russia on its producing strategy, all 3 of those factors are important here.
Tom, do you believe?
Go ahead. No, I haven't had an update on peak oil lately. We don't talk about that much anymore. Can you give me? Have you pushed out your year yet? Where are we? About 3,800 AD.
Well, very good point. And you know, it is interesting that peak oil has gone away, and with it has gone away the recognition of one of the most important factors we could talk about. That's the embedded decline in the 92 million barrel a day producing base. That can be a bigger factor in all likelihood in 2016, 17, and 18 than global demand growth. And so I think you know, peak oil is obviously not a big issue here, but the evidence of an embedded decline on the order of 4 to 5 million barrels a day, I think will show up second half of this year and begin to become a big factor beyond that.
Yeah. Well, Malthusian bets haven't been great for the people that have been forecasting those ever. And I guess it's the old, you know, we didn't run out of stones. It was so,
No, I think peak oil's passé, and without question. But that issue of the embedded decline when you don't spend money is big.
Hey Tom. Quickly, I'm sorry. Kinder Morgan announcing it's cutting its dividend. The Chevron CEO yesterday said his dividend was, for all intents and purposes, sacred. Are we going to start seeing large oil companies cutting their dividends en masse?
I doubt it, but if you go below 30 and it really looks like it's going to stay there for more than a quarter or two, that debate will come back. I personally think even with a test below 30 that looks like it's going to be very short, the majors will keep their dividends in place.
Tom, what do you make of these reports that the Saudis could run out of money in 5 years if they don't do some massive budget cuts because of the decline in the price of oil?
Well, arithmetically, you do come up with something like 5 years, but based on everything I've seen with the Saudis, they're conservative. Their excess trade credits, which is really their savings account, they don't want to more than have that, in my view. And that happens in the next 2.5 years. So that's the practical reality, as opposed to that 5-year arithmetic calculation.
It's even tougher than people think. Okay.
Sorry, forgive me. Tom, appreciate the time this morning. Thank you so much.
Good to be here.
All right, Tom Petrie.
Investigators in the San Bernardino